Welcome to the Simplify Consulting podcast, where today we'll be covering all things financial well-being. My name's Chris, I'm a wealth consultant, and I'm joined by my colleagues Jane Brown and Dom House, both lead consultants at Simplify. A fortnight ago was Mental Health Awareness Week, a key week in the year which promotes awareness of mental health. One of the consistent underlying themes each year is the impact of financial worries on mental health, and that is your financial well-being. We recently published our blog titled Wealthy Mind, Healthy Body, where we explored the evidence that connects financial well-being and mental health and what firms are doing to support their customers. I'm pleased to say that today we'll be hearing some insightful views from Jane and Dom and what they think the wealth industry can do better to support customers and their staff alike. So Dom, I'll come to you first. Can you share your thoughts on if financial well-being is being taken seriously enough if we compare it to mental health and physical well-being?
Sure. So I think the simple answer is it's not. I think, if you compare where we are as a society around mental health, around physical well-being, they are far more visible. They're talked about far more. I think there's an underlying challenge with financial well-being that we just don't talk about our personal finances very much. I think it's always been considered a very private matter, how much you earn, what your debt looks like, what you spend your money on is, to a lot of people, that's a very personal piece of information that they wouldn't normally share. And so I think as a consequence, we don't talk about financial well-being in the same context as we talk about mental and physical well-being, because it's just not as it's not highlighted enough. I think obviously over the last couple of years we've gone through a really hard time for a lot of people with the cost of living crisis, high inflation, some stagnating real wages. So I think there has been a bit of a shift that makes talking about these things more comfortable for some people. But I think there's still a long way to go before we recognise the importance of it in the same terms as the other areas.
Yeah, absolutely. And Jane, so why do you think financial well-being is so important?
Well, I think when people are not feeling comfortable with their finances, and as Dom sort of described how that is for people, I think it is all consuming. It affects all parts of their life because the anxiety that comes with that, whether they're concerned because they don't understand something, but they know they need to take some action. Perhaps it's, to prepare for their retirement. They want to do something, but they just don't understand. And that causes them a bit of anxiety about how they plan for their future. But also looking at it from a debt management perspective, that can impact everything because it's a day-to-day problem for people where it will affect, their day-to-day really, and how they're thinking. It's just all consuming when people are financially worried about their situation.
I think
Yeah,
the other
absolutely.
the other thing is we talk about debt management and issues around that, and perfectly valid. We also need to recognize that it can impact on anyone. So it's not necessarily those on the lower end of the economic scale that suffer with some of these things. I think it can be people with what would seemingly be very high paid jobs, very comfortable lifestyle, etc., that they can still have issues with financial well-being that can impact them just as much. So we shouldn't equate financial well-being with necessarily income levels or overall wealth. So, when we look at it from a wealth industry point of view, it's easy to kind of say, well, actually, people with ISAs and SIPs and that kind of thing, they're in a comfortable financial situation, and it may be the case for a lot of people, but it's also just as valid to consider it from whatever walk of life people are from.
Yeah, absolutely, I agree.
Yeah, and I think to your point there that in terms of it can actually impact anybody, and that can also come through the form of a life event, a bereavement, for example. And then we start to think a bit wider and actually go, how does vulnerability come into the conversation as well? And ultimately, the two are intrinsically linked as well. So again, Dom, another question for yourself on that matter. So specifically looking through a wealth lens, and as an industry, do you think we are aligning vulnerability to financial well-being, or is there actually more that we need to be doing ourselves?
I mean, yes, because it is one of the vulnerability indicators, isn't it, around financial well-being? Got my words out eventually. So, you know, on the surface level, yes, you know, it should be in the minds of any wealth firm that they need to be considering that alongside the other types of vulnerability. And as you say, Chris, you know, vulnerability isn't a binary thing. It's not you're in this camp or this camp. You can have multiple vulnerabilities that are the result of a life event, or you know, a health challenge, or whatever it may be. So I think, you know, there needs to be recognition that the support that's required as a result of, you know, vulnerability needs to be you know, thought through by providers in terms of how they interact with their customers, what additional support they're going to need. I think we've heard, you know, really poor stories about people who are going through, you know, difficult life events and actually not had the support that they need. There are some, you know, some good pockets of things happening. So we've heard recently about um, a firm who are looking at gambling addiction, recognizing the indicators of that, and then um, making adjustments for customers who are showing those signs. And I think more can be done to proactively look for signs of financial you know, hardship, or other types of vulnerabilities that may impact on people's finances, and then be more proactive in terms of what support do they need? Do they need some level of intervention to, you know, stop them, you know, taking actions that might be that might deliver poor outcomes for them, or you know, potentially cause them more harm. So I think vulnerability is it's a real positive move over the last, you know, however many 10 years or so. I think we're on the journey for that, and I think financial well-being needs to be you know, a major consideration for wealth firms.
Yeah, indeed. And if we look through um, the scope of consumer duty as well, which is overlaying this stuff, do you think that is then going to in turn have a positive impact? So if we start thinking of the changes to things such as like correspondence as an example, so actually when customers receive information about their products and services they got, actually they might in turn understand what they've got, what they're paying in towards, and the impacts of any changes that might have. How do you see that impacting it?
Yeah, so absolutely. So as part of consumer duty, you know, firms are going to have to be much clearer in their communications with customer understanding being one of the outcomes that they're driving towards. I think the the level of testing that firms are doing to understand how different groups are receiving that communication, and financial hardship, or you know, those kind of considerations should be part of that testing, so that people understand, okay, what are the fees? Is that eroding my, you know, wealth over time? Am I paying more than I should do for the services that I'm providing, or being provided to? Absolutely part of that conversation. I think the other point is making it really clear what customers can do if they're in those kind of situations. So what are the points of communication? What are the processes that they should go to? Firms should be you know, clear on what the customer journey, the interaction points are for them. And then when customers do reach out, there should be a really considered journey for how they go how they take the customer through that to achieve the right outcomes that they're going to be required, recognizing that different customers in different circumstances are going to need different levels of support. They're going to need different outcomes effectively for how they get themselves out of a potentially a difficult situation.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you mentioned it there, actually, access to support and services is vitally important. And it's crucial that customers know what support is available to them, how they access it, and what the benefits of that are for them as well. And Jane, just coming over to yourself now, have you seen any examples of any tools and services which kind of stand out, which can help customers and staff of these firms as well to support things such as vulnerability and financial well-being?
Yeah, so I think if you think about retirement and the pension calculators as one way, these are becoming like pretty mainstream now, having tools available on public sites where you can calculate, how much do I need to save? What kind of retirement income would that give me? And then looking at the different retirement options, if you take out this amount, and what kind of living quality of living do you want in retirement? Do you want to go on loads of holidays and so on? You can kind of factor in lots of different things to work out if you're calculating saving enough and investing enough for those later years. Those calculators are readily available now for everyone, whether you've signed up to a product or not. So as I say, they're sort of publicly available now on a lot of companies' websites. From a debt management perspective, obviously, there's lots of tools to help you consider consolidating debt, how you can repay your debt, and all the different options available there. For people that can't follow or seek kind of independent financial advice, there's lots of different ways now with like robo advice, where you can answer a set of questions and then be returned with the investment strategy that might be best for you based on your not your bespoke holistic personal circumstances, but by answering a few questions you can determine if you're a bit more of a cautious investor and so on. So there are routes available in that aspect as well, and then just basic budgeting, really. I get this amount of money in, these are my expenses, how do I budget? There's lots of apps available now for that as well. So I think there are routes for people to kind of help themselves.
And those apps as well, Jane, in terms of, there's more and more coming available that say things like how much do you have available to save at the end of the month, and actually putting them into products and services that actually will help them to save, even if those are just small amounts. Because obviously, we talk about people in debt, rightfully so, but also being able to use the wealth management industry, which I think a lot of people kind of shy away from, but actually use it to build your financial resilience as well. So even if you save a small amount, but from a young age, ideally, you can actually build up a pot to help you through difficult life events. So if you lose your job, or if other things happen that could impact you financially, you will be able to get by for a period of time. And actually thinking, taking it back to that idea of supporting someone holistically, their financial health being level with their mental health, their physical health. Actually, if you have that level of resilience that you've built up over time, it can also help you survive those periods, not just from a financial perspective, but also from a mental perspective, because that actually I'm okay from a financial perspective. I've got a few months saved. So, if I lose my job, I've got a bit of time to find another one. Or, if you lose a loved one, actually that part of your life is taken care of whilst you deal with, some other, some really difficult circumstances.
And I think actually just in your, like, without thinking about investments and the complications of that for some people, even, your day-to-day bank accounts now are helping you with your daily or weekly or monthly management of money. So, pushing notifications to you to let you know that you're spending less this month, or you're, spending a bit more than last month. There's things that are happening in that space as well that helping people be a bit more on top of, what's happening day to day. So it's not always about, the longer term thinking. It's the, the budgeting side, helping people to see where they might be, going a bit off their normal spending patterns and things like that. I think that's a really positive way to get people engaged in their day-to-day sort of expenditure and how they manage their money, and perhaps where they've, got a bit left over in their bank account each month. It's like a prompt to think, do you want to pop it into a saving pot, or perhaps there's, an ISA available, in that bank as well. So I think that's really, really positive to see some of those sort of push notifications sort of coming out to help people sort of engage in their money.
Yeah, indeed. And I talked about this a bit in my blog as well. It's great that we're seeing some first steps being put in place by providers and firms, and many of these support services are free. They're inclusive in banking apps, as you mentioned there, Jane, as well. But I think the reality is for many, they encounter these huge life events. They go for a mortgage, for example, and they only worry about it when they're interested in doing it. They don't really plan ahead enough to do that. And question marks come out of, actually, is that a result of the way that we learn today in schools and through the national curriculum? So I think there is still more steps that we need to introduce. There's better education that we can implement. But again, Jane, I'll be quite keen to hear your thoughts to see if you think the industry can introduce any more support or to aid the financial education around this as well.
Yeah, so I would connect this to my own situation of being a mother of 3 children. My eldest daughter recently said to me, "What even is a pension?" She's 14, so it's not that many years away where she will go into employment potentially that will trigger her into auto enrollment, and she's got no idea what that is. And I've got another daughter who sees me paying for things with contactless. You're just clicking a card, and they're saying to me, "I can't wait till I'm older and I can just click my card." And I'm explaining, well, no, there's money in the bank. So when you click the card, you have to have the money there, or you have to pay it back if it's, it's the understanding that concept of you've got the money and you're spending it, and it's, that transaction's happening, or you're paying for it and it's credit, and I'm going to have to pay that back at some point. It's, that concept is not there in children in school. So just that basic debt and, debit and credit concept's not there, let alone, I've got this amount of money, and, trying to budget your money in, or even like having £5 a week savings, or, pocket money or something. Whether they spend that all in one go, or whether they save that up and then buy something, they just have no education of that in school, in my experience anyway.
And they haven't really transitioned how we talk about it to the digital age, have we? So it's far easier to explain the concept of money when you're actually holding it, and you pay for something, you get change back, or you go to the bank to put some money in, or whatever it may be. Then there are obviously some things that are coming, they've been around for a while now, things like GoHenry and things like that, which do help with some of this stuff. But I think that as you say, it's a bit concerning when you've got people who are potentially, only a few years away from entering the workforce, who don't have those concepts. And what we'd like to see is, not only do they understand what a pension is, but they also understand the benefits of saving for a pension, not only from a tax relief perspective, and how much of a difference it makes if you save early to your future retirement prospects. So it's clearly a long way to go, isn't it?
And if that's what we're saying to, I'd say it's generalizing, but like 30-year-old, 35-year-old, if you haven't engaged in your pension now, like you should be, we should be saying that to the 18-year-olds, to the 14-year-olds, like you said, save early, because then you can't go back, can you? And then just find the money once you start having responsibilities and so on. It's like, save while you've got all that disposable income. If you look back to when you were 18, what did you all do with your money? It's like pop it in a pension.
Mm.
Well, when you've got big commitments coming up, you want to save for your first car, you want to save to move out for the first time, you want to go on holidays, etc. Those will consume a large amount of your income that could be from your first job. But actually, this all does need to be wrapped up into that same conversation. And my feeling is that we need to be starting this earlier. This needs to form part of the national curriculum. It needs to be talked about week in, week out at schools, for the benefit of that individual, in the long term. And I think if this doesn't happen, there are going to be risks. And Dom, I'd be kind of really interested to hear your thoughts around actually if we do start neglecting our financial well-being, what impact could that have on us as customers of these firms, but also from a provider perspective as well? What could that mean?
Well, yeah, I mean, to be honest, if you're not engaging with this stuff and you're not taking care of your finances, you're effectively locked out of some of these things that are primary ways of securing your future and securing your income in retirement, but also before that. I think people who are engaged in how to build wealth at an earlier age are going to have much more freedom later in life to live the life that they want. So it's an enabling piece. It's obviously not the biggest determinant of having a happy and fulfilled life, but it is a major part of how someone navigates their way through life. And from a firm's perspective, I think they've obviously got consumer duty now, so there's a mandate upon them to deliver good outcomes, to avoid foreseeable harm. So that might be seeing the types of product services that people are buying or they already have, and making sure that they are suitable for them. So firms who have customers with small SIP amounts being saved, high fees obviously than they can achieve, they'll receive elsewhere, there is a duty on them to take action and help the customer through that. But more holistically, I think as an industry, you'd like to think that the more we can educate people, the more understanding people have. It's actually a self-perpetuating kind of virtuous circle of customers are more able to save, and therefore the savings and the investments come into the industry. So it benefits everyone. So yeah, I think it's right that these conversations are happening. I think it's important that the industry looks at this topic, not just in terms of here's some specific harms, here's some specific vulnerabilities that we need to address. That's important, but also look at the whole picture and help everyone in society achieve better financial well-being.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Dom. With that, we conclude the podcast today. So Dom, Jane, thanks very much for your time today. As I mentioned earlier on, we've recently released a blog around financial well-being, the impacts it has on mental health. We pulled out some really interesting solutions and services on offer, if that's something you'd wish to explore. You can find out more information about Simplify Consulting and read more of our expert industry insights as well, and that's at www.simplifyconsulting.co.uk. Thank you.